The morning sun shone gently through the stained-glass windows of Spencer Manor's Grand Hall as family and friends gathered to celebrate the life of Liam Spencer, the charismatic heir whose untimely death had left a void in the hearts of all who knew him. Elegantly arranged white roses and photos of Liam smiling at family barbecues and charity galas adorn the stage where Brooke Logan, Hope Logan, Steffi Forrester, Bill Spencer, Ridge and Eric Forrester, Carter Walton, and a host of dignitaries sat in solemn remembrance. The hush that fell over the assembled guests was broken only by the soft strains of a violin playing Liam's favorite melody. As Brooke rose to deliver a eulogy that began with gentle reminiscences of Liam's warmth and ended in a plea for justice for the young man whose fate had been sealed by a reckless experiment. Just as Bill rose to speak of his beloved son's indomitable spirit and the need to honor his memory by upholding truth and integrity, several stern-faced federal agents in plain clothes, flanked by Department of Health and Human Services investigators, entered the hall from the side doors. The murmurs of condolences transformed into gasps of shock when the lead agent approached Dr. Grace Buckingham, who sat in the back row, a place she had taken at the family's reluctant invitation, and calmly announced she was under arrest for manslaughter, healthcare fraud, and conspiracy. In one fluid motion, the agent produced a warrant and clipped handcuffs onto Grace's wrists, and the once revered neurosurgeon looked around in stunned disbelief as security escorted her down the aisle. A collective gasp rippled through the hall, followed by a tense silence and then outraged cries of betrayal as guests realized the truth of the woman they had once trusted to save Liam's life. Hope's hand flew to her mouth. Steffi's eyes filled with tears of anguish and righteous fury. Brooke staggered forward, her grief twisted into horror. Bill, pale as marble, sank back into his seat, the gavel of justice crashing down amidst the roses that had once symbolized hope. Reporters clamored at the windows, filming the dramatic scene as federal agents led Grace past the podium, where Liam's portrait loomed larger than life. Onlookers pressed their faces to the glass, cameras flashing, demanding answers. How had the esteemed Dr. Buckingham managed to conceal her illicit operating suite? How many more lives had been gambled in the name of rogue ambition? The storm of outrage built into a roar, punctuated by sobs and shouts of "Justice for Liam" and "Lock her away." Meanwhile, Ridge and Eric exchanged grim looks, knowing that the Forrester name was now entangled in scandal alongside the Spencers. Carter stepped forward to comfort Hope, whispering assurances that the evidence against Grace was ironclad, that the truth of her betrayal would be laid bare in court. Outside the manor's ornate gates, a crowd had gathered, chanting "No more lies" and "Shame on Grace." As the convoy of black SUVs carrying Grace Buckingham and her agents pulled away, sirens wailing, a final, bitter requiem for a life that had ended not at the hands of fate, but by the hubris of a woman who traded her oath to heal for $1 million bribe and a hollow promise of medical miracle. In that moment, amid the white roses and tear-stained linens, the Spencer family realized that Liam's legacy would not be defined solely by tragedy, but by the unwavering pursuit of truth that had brought his murderer to justice in the very sanctuary meant to honor his memory. A sanctuary now forever marked by the echo of handcuffs and the roar of a crowd demanding that such a betrayal could never be allowed to happen again. In the sterile silence of Spencer Surgical Center's hidden wing, where the hum of life support machines mingled with the distant clang of stainless steel instruments, the unthinkable truth lay dormant until an unmarked flash drive surfaced in the hands of a tenacious detective working alongside the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the Department of Health and Human Services. The video, captured by a clandestine camera concealed in the overhead gantry of Operating Room 7, revealed Dr. Grace Buckingham performing not a life-saving procedure, but a meticulously choreographed charade, her scalpel tracing the arc of a virtual incision, her gloved fingers gliding through the air above Liam Spencer's frail skull while no actual cut was made. No tumor was excised, and no stitch was ever tied to heal the gaping wound she pretended to sew. As the footage unfolded in chilling real time, her expression remained inscrutable, her eyes flicking to the console of the anesthesia pump. Delivering nothing but saline before returning to pantomime the decisive slice, the cautious probe, the triumphant sweep of supposed pathology. The detective, a veteran of complex medical fraud cases, recognized immediately the gravity of what he beheld. This was not merely gross negligence or unauthorized practice. It was a malevolent confidence trick executed under the guise of cutting-edge neurosurgery that had sacrificed Liam's life on the altar of avarice and vanity. Armed with a warrant, he convened an emergency task force that poured into the facility in the pre-dawn chill, sealing off exits, corralling staff, and isolating the recording equipment before booting up the surveillance network's DVR and downloading the incriminating files, time-stamped to July 15, 2025. Just hours after Grace Buckingham had assured Bill Spencer that his only son was on the cusp of recovery. Meanwhile, in the adjacent recovery suite, Bill's private refuge from prying eyes, Liam's monitors lay dark and unresponsive, the rhythmic bleeps replaced by mournful silence, as the neurology team made the heart-racking pronouncement that no parent, regardless of wealth or influence, ever wishes to hear. Liam Spencer had succumbed to the untreated tumor, its malignant cells having proliferated unchecked while Grace's sham incision danced across the video frame. The official cause of death, as recorded in the preliminary autopsy, cited acute intracranial pressure and hemorrhagic stroke due to malignant glioma left intact, the very fate Grace had pledged to prevent. At the moment her true crime was laid bare, federal agents in plainclothes emerged from Operating Room 7 and descended upon Grace as she lingered in the hall, scrub cap pushed back, mask dangling, still clutching her phantom scalpel. One agent slapped a binding leather cuff onto her wrist, the other producing a laminated arrest warrant charging her with second-degree murder, healthcare fraud, conspiracy to commit unauthorized medical experimentation, and grand theft from a private foundation. Grace's eyes widened in shock, her professional rhythm shattered, as she mouthed the word no, echoing into the cavernous corridor that had so recently witnessed her imposter performance. Bill Spencer, summoned by frantic messages from the hospital's security chief, arrived moments later, his tailored suit disheveled, hair streaked with gray, face a mask of dread. He witnessed Grace Buckingham being led away, head bowed, agents gripping her arms like jailers shepherding a condemned criminal. Even as he staggered forward to demand answers, the detective stepped into the fluorescent glare and announced, "Mr. Spencer, you are not a suspect at this time, but we will need a full statement regarding the events leading up to your son's procedure." Brooke Logan, who had accompanied Bill in the frantic rush to the hidden wing, wept openly. Her grief mingled with righteous indignation as she watched the architect of her son's demise vanish behind a set of reinforced doors destined for the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Detention Center. Hope Logan and Steffi Forrester, who had stood vigil by Liam's side through the long night, collapsed into each other's arms in the hallway, their tears carving tracks through the makeup they had applied only hours before in the hope of seeing Liam smile again. Carter Walton, summoned by Bridget Forrester at the first hint of impropriety, arrived with legal documents in hand, ready to pursue a civil suit and ensure that every shred of evidence, from the flash drive to the hospital logs, would be preserved for trial. The revelation of Grace's mock surgery sent shockwaves through the medical community. News outlets seized upon the lurid footage, broadcasting frame-by-frame analyses of her phantom cuts and the motionless form of her victim. Congressional committees called for hearings on the oversight failures that allowed a surgeon to commandeer a fully equipped or for a one-woman show of criminal deceit. The California Medical Board convened an emergency session to revoke Grace Buckingham's license, issuing a press release that condemned her actions as a gross violation of ethical and professional standards. Regulatory agencies descended upon Spencer Surgical Center, subpoenaing every operating schedule, inspecting drug logs for discrepancies, and interviewing staff under oath about the unauthorized midnight procedures they had been ordered to keep secret. The hospital's CEO, blindsided by the scandal, held a tearful press conference pledging full cooperation with investigators and announcing sweeping policy changes, mandatory peer review for all experimental surgeries, real-time or surveillance accessible to hospital administrators, and a zero-tolerance policy for off-the-books medical practice. In the aftermath, the Spencer family's grief was compounded by the anger and betrayal that coursed through their veins. Bill Spencer, once the unshakable patriarch, now bore the weight of guilt for having placed blind faith in Grace's reassurances, for having funneled her the funds that became the bribe enabling her lethal ruse. Brooke Logan, her face hollow with exhaustion, vowed to dedicate herself to a foundation in Liam's name, one that would champion transparency in medical care and support families torn apart by fraudulent practitioners. Hope, her voice still trembling, pledged to carry her brother's memory forward into every cause she pursued, determined that his legacy would honor truth and justice rather than deceit and death. Steffi Forrester, whose decades of intimate friendship with Grace Buckingham made the betrayal cut even deeper, found herself testifying against her former confidant in depositions, recounting hushed conversations in which Grace had teased about bypassing red tape and mocking hospital bureaucracy even as she flaunted her credentials. Carter Walton, by Steffi's side, crafted the civil complaint that would seek punitive damages from Spencer Publications to compensate for Liam's wrongful death and fund the legal fight against the hospital's negligent oversight. As the legal wheels turned inexorably forward, the drama extended beyond the courtroom into living rooms and social feeds. Fans of the bold and the beautiful debated the culpability of each party, dissecting the timeline of events, speculating whether Bill Spencer had been an unwitting dupe or an active conspirator, and lamenting the tragic irony that a family famous for resilience and power could be humbled by a single surgeon's perversion of her oath. The network's ratings spiked as viewers tuned in for updates on the trial, for the emotional reunions of the Logan and Forrester clans, and for the whispered rumors of a last-ditch effort by Grace's high-priced defense team to pin the blame on a missing lab technician or an unapproved pharmaceutical, though no such scapegoat could undo the damning clarity of the recorded evidence. In the echo of that hidden operating room, where the camera had borne silent witness to a man's final moments, the lesson rang out like a verdict. Technology must serve as the sentinel of truth, ensuring that every incision is real, every consent genuine, and every life entrusted to a surgeon's care protected by the unblinking eye of accountability. And though Liam Spencer could not be brought back from the brink, the consequences of Grace Buckingham's crime would reverberate through every hospital policy, every medical board hearing, and every courtroom that would convene to deliver justice for a family shattered by the cold calculus of a false miracle, ensuring that no surgeon could ever again perform such a deadly illusion under the cloak of darkness.